Welcome to the Travel Brief with your host, Peter Watts.
Right, William, welcome back. Lovely to have you. We are going to talk about Germany today, I believe. And I should probably start with a bit of confession, because Germany was never really a country that that was particularly high on my list of places to visit. And I was looking back when you kind of mentioned that we'd be talking about Germany today. And it actually completely changed for me back in August 24. So my cousin Stevie and his wife Diane asked Paula and I to join them in Cochem on the, is it Moselle for its wine festival?
Wow.
From the moment that we landed, everything just seems to work. I mean, we managed to get all the way from the airport to the hotel using public services, buses, and then a train well after 11:30 at night. And I mean, coming from Somerset, where it can sometimes feel very lucky if a bus turns up every 2 hours and actually takes you somewhere useful, I found it quite remarkable how easy it was. And then we got to Cochem itself, and I mean, beautiful scenery, vineyards running down towards the Moselle, the castle looking over the town, fantastic wine. The river cruise was fun, the wine festival, and then they had these superb fireworks over the river, and it was just brilliant. And I came home. I can remember coming home thinking, I've really underestimated Germany, really underestimated it. And I'd heard about the Christmas markets, and the following year, so December last year, it was natural for us to go to try them out. So we went to Cologne. We did the cathedral, the chocolate museum from memory, and naturally kind of drank a fair amount of, is it Glühwein? So I'm definitely not coming into kind of today's conversation as an expert, but I'm coming from, I suppose, from someone who has relatively recently discovered Germany, I suppose. And I would like to know a little bit more now, if that's okay with you. So thankfully, I've got you opposite me today, someone that does know rather a lot about Germany. I mean, you've been writing about Germany for probably over 3 decades now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can see the 15th Man over your shoulder there. So this is the book that this is your debut novel, I believe, or
That's right. Yeah.
It's going to be published on the 1st of October, and it's set in West Berlin in 1990. So immediately after the wall has fallen.
Berlin, Dresden, Eastern Germany in 1990, which is this interesting year in German history. Is after the wall's fallen, after the Berlin Wall's come down, but before German reunification, so everything's up in the air. Nobody quite knows what's going on. And, the genesis for that book, and also the genesis for my German travel writing, was that my father's German originally. He came over to England when he was a little kid, but we've still got lots of relatives in Germany. I'm actually a German-British dual citizen. I got a German passport too. So, and as luck would have it, just as I was setting out on my journalistic career, it was pretty much the same time the Berlin Wall came down. So that provided a lot of opportunities. Suddenly, readers and editors, newspapers were very interested to find out what was happening, not just in Berlin, but in Eastern Germany as well, and Eastern Germany, which was a country that was virtually impossible to visit during that Cold War, very, very difficult to visit, not very nice, even if you did get to go there, in terms of all the restrictions and surveillance and stuff. Suddenly that was completely wide open, fascinating place, great for journalism, great for visitors. And so I spent quite a lot of time there, and, and obviously in Germany as a whole. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it is a bit of a blind spot for a lot of British travellers. Having said that, I mean, I wouldn't overstate that. I mean, the Germany's, I think it's after France and Spain in the whole of Europe has the most European visitors. So there's a lot of visitors going from elsewhere in Europe. I guess because we've, got to get over the channel, we tend to miss out on it a little bit. Partly there's misconceptions about the weather. I remember when they had the World Cup in Germany in 2006, everyone's going, oh, it's so hot. We didn't expect it to be this hot. Well, it's continental Europe. I mean, it's not the Costa del Sol, but, the summers are significantly hotter than they are in Britain. And, the sort of summers we're getting right now, we certainly don't need it to be going somewhere super hot. So, if you want to go there in the summer, you'll have nice long sunny days. If you want to go there in the winter, southern Germany has lots of snow, which is also quite nice. Right. So there's lots to discover. And
go
on.
No, I was only just going to chip in. Lewis has been to Berlin, And what fascinated me was him kind of talking. He kind of portrayed it as there's quite a lot of different versions that are all kind of mixed within this. I don't know if this is quite true, but obviously you've got the Imperial Berlin, you've got the Nazi, you've got the divided city, you've got East and West, and obviously how the Cold War affected them. But is that quite true now?
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a great mix, Berlin. And I thought this is the best place to start.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to say, I don't want to jump all over the place because obviously it's a huge big country, 16 different Länder, states, each one is like a sort of mini country of its own in a way, a bit like you think of Wales and Scotland and all that kind of thing. The different German Länder are that different from each other.
Yeah.
But I know there's a limit to how much people can absorb in one chat. So I thought we'd start with Berlin and then just focus on three or four different cities and the surroundings. Yeah. And Berlin is the best place to start. I'm always a bit frustrated that so many British people I know want to go to Berlin in the middle of the winter. They've seen all these Cold War films and they think it'd be very, very interesting to go there in the winter. Actually, I would always say go to Berlin in the spring or the summer because it is a wonderful summer city. It's a very green city. It's about the size of London, but with about 4 million people. There's a lot of green space in the city. There's a lot of lakes around the city. It's got a very cool sort of grungy vibe in summer, and winters can be very severe and are not particularly snowy either. So, I would not recommend it for the winter, really. I would say go in spring or summer, and it's a great place to go to right through till kind of October, I guess, So
okay. That's good
if anyone's looking for a mini break right now, I would say go right now. And you're absolutely right. It's loads of different cities in one place, loads of different parts of town. The imperial city, as you say, I mean, that shouldn't be kind of underestimated. There's lots of palaces there, and it's a very spectacular city in that regard. People definitely sort of hone in on the kind of Nazi era or the Cold War era, because that was obviously very dramatic and quite, the Cold War era in particular is kind of quite unique to the city. But actually, I would say the imperial stuff is really very special too. I mean, we don't think immediately in terms of parks and palaces with regard to Berlin, but actually there are a number of them. And in particular, Potsdam, which is the kind of Versailles of Berlin, which is just to the west of the city, but you can easily reach it on an S-Bahn, which is their version of like the tube network. Probably get out there in about half an hour on a direct train, cost you €4 or €5. And that you could spend the whole day in Potsdam. I mean, it's like Versailles, it's a number of different palaces, very big park. Town is also very pretty and very lively. So there's lots of things around Berlin to see and do, as well as all the kind of iconic stuff right in the middle of the city.
Yeah. Is there anywhere that tourists would potentially kind of completely miss? Would they miss is there a danger you go in kind of laser focused on the history that modern history that we may know, or older generations may know? Do you know what I mean? Would they miss the imperial side of it, the palaces, or is it actually kind of, I suppose I'm just trying to, find out if we went down there with, if I visited, am I going to fully focus on particular areas when actually I should be there a little bit more open-minded, I suppose?
Well, I think a great place. I mean, it's daft to miss out on the iconic sites. So, I'd say day one in Berlin, head for the Brandenburg Gate. And then what you can do from the Brandenburg Gate, a great way to spend a day or two is to walk along the route of the wall through the middle of the city. And obviously most of the wall is down now. There's a few little bits kept as memorials. But actually there's a little cobbled path that runs along the route of where the wall was, which is very interesting to walk down. And that sort of zigzags through a lot of the main sites. And the central section's about 10 kilometers. So what's that, 6 or 7 miles? So, you can easily do that in a day, including stopping off for, coffee breaks and whatever. And actually you will pass a lot of museums and sites and things along the way. So that walk along the wall, I mean, you can check it out through the tourist board. Visit Berlin is the official tourist board. So look that one up. visitberlin.de, I think, is the website. Yeah. And so that walk along the wall is a great way to get your bearings about the middle of the city. As I say, Potsdam, which is the Versailles of Berlin, which is like a sort of small city, large town on its own, but actually in the kind of city limits over to the west of the city. That is a great place for a day out. And actually another place that people miss out on is Wannsee, which is a very big lake, which has actually got a beach on it, and lots of people swim there and things. and that is within the city limits as well, and about 20 minutes by train from the middle
Oh,
of town.
okay. Yeah.
But the other thing is, I'd say with Berlin, is a bit like in Paris, that you can go pairing all over town, trying to tick off all the sites. But actually, a very good thing to do in Berlin is wherever you fetch up, wherever your hotel is, to just check out the local area and sort of be in the local area. I'd say the different districts of Berlin, now they're rather like the different arrondissements in Paris. Each one's got its own kind of atmosphere. And, there's a lot to be said for just checking out the local vibe, the cafes, the bars. It's a very user-friendly city. You know, everyone speaks English. If you want to speak German, then you'll get a very warm welcome. But, it's not a problem getting by in English.
Sure.
As you touched on with Cochem, the local transport is extremely efficient.
Right.
S-Bahns, U-Bahns, trams, buses. And actually, you get a thing called a Berlin welcome card, which gets get that from the tourist office when you arrive. And you can buy that for 2 or 3 days or 4 or 5. And that gives you reduced admission to lots of attractions and museums and things. But the best thing about it, it's like a free transport pass. So you don't need to be buying tickets.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You can
That's
just
good to know.
jump on and off the buses and trams and things. And I can't remember the exact prices, but it doesn't break the bank. You're talking 20 or 30 euros to cover all these transport. So that's well worth getting. So that's the welcome card from Visit Berlin, which is the official tourist board. But I would say if you walk along the wall on the first day, that's 10 kilometers. You will see a lot of things along the route that you'll then want to go and check out. Museum Island, right in the middle of the city, that, as obviously as the name suggests, got a lot of museums, but that's kind of like the center of the city as well. A lot of interesting architecture, old and modern, and there's a lot of history to see there as well. But it doesn't need to be all doom and gloom. As I say, I mean, it's a very green city too, especially in the summer, and there's a lot of outdoor stuff, and you can go there and have a very kind of fun, laid back time without spending your whole time in museums.
Yeah. Checkpoint Charlie, kind of East Side Gallery, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah. So, and it's one of these places. I mean, it really is too big, and there's too much there to do it all in one go, and you wouldn't want to. So, in a way, I sort of think less is more, rather than sort of trying to get all over town. Follow your nose, go to the places that interest you, and as I say, Visit Berlin. The tourist board there are very, very proactive. They'll be very helpful about sorting you out and pointing you in the right directions. And that welcome card is a great way to.
That's really good to know. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
Can I ask you? I had someone that's been watching our episodes recently, and they asked me to ask you one question, which was they were saying, where would you go in the evening in some of these places? Because we're ticking off the famous sites, and you are great at giving us all the kind of golden nuggets of where else to go off piste kind of thing. Of an evening in Berlin, is there anywhere in particular that kind of comes to mind straight away of the things that people should go to see or do?
Well, I mean, I would say, obviously, Berlin is great for classical music, if that's your thing.
Okay.
I'm a bit too old and grey to give people top tips about the kind of techno scene or anything like that. I mean, you'd need to ask someone half my age. But I mean, I think also the other thing that's very refreshing about Germany as a whole, but Berlin as much as anywhere, is the quality in the bars. We're sort of catching up a bit with our gastropubs and stuff. But I mean, pretty much any bar or you going into in Germany, you can get a really good, inexpensive, good quality sort of proper cooked meal. You find people of all ages in there. There's none of the kind of vertical drinking you get in a lot of places in Britain. People get tipsy, they don't get drunk. I hardly ever see any sort of drunkenness in Germany. And I mean, often the seating in these places is like trestle tables, so you end up sitting alongside other people who you don't know, and that's all fine. So I would say just follow your nose with regard to that sort of thing. I mean, the other thing with Berlin as well, I mean, it is a kind of a great sort of city for international food, ethnic food, vegan food. You don't need to be eating sort of breakfast and sauerkraut the whole time. I mean, it's like, I mean, if you picture it, it's a bit like going to London, I guess. Is that, I mean, you can eat traditional English food in London if you want, but obviously it's just as renowned for international cuisine as well, And
Yeah.
one sort of interesting thing with the cuisine is that Germany has over 300 Michelin-starred restaurants. I think after France,
Really? Okay. Wow.
after
Okay.
France, it's got the second most. So, I mean, as I say,
Yeah.
this is a big major economy, third biggest economy in Europe. So naturally, there's a lot of high-end stuff, but actually, you can also eat very well, very inexpensively there.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
they're the country that pretty much invented fast food. They call it Imbiss, but, the Frankfurter, the hamburger, all that kind of thing, the German doner kebab, all that stuff comes from there. So you can eat on the street there very well as well. So, yeah, I mean,
That's
everybody
brilliant.
finds their own Berlin. It's a bit like London
Yeah.
or Paris in that everybody kind of, as you said before, everybody kind of finds their own version of it. And every
Yeah.
time I go back, I do different stuff. I feel it's never a city I've really got to know somehow, because it's
Okay.
so
Yeah.
each time I find myself in a different part of town and end up doing different stuff. And
Yeah.
things are
Great.
always changing there as well. It's a city with a lot of churn. So I never like
Right.
to set
Okay.
myself up as an expert about the place. I like to kind of, follow my nose.
Yeah. 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 Experience different things. Yeah. I like that.
Oh,
I think we're heading south now, aren't we? I think we'd, unless there's anything else you wanted to catch up on Berlin, but I think we're going to be
yeah,
heading
no,
south to kind of Munich, aren't we?
yeah, well, absolutely. Well, I mean, I sort of feel that anybody who hasn't been to Germany, I mean, the great thing to do is see Berlin and the environs of Berlin, and then see Munich, because you get the
Okay.
two sides of the country, I guess. Munich, you're in the south, you're in Bavaria, which Bavaria is as different from the rest of Germany as I would say Scotland is from England. I mean, obviously
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
shared history, but there's a lot of very distinctive things about Bavaria. And I guess that's where a lot of our kind of archetypes about Lederhosen and
Yeah,
the
I was going to say, I kind of immediately think of beer gardens and beautiful old buildings and kind of Oktoberfest and sausages and
yeah, well, that's all
etc.
true,
Now, probably badly stereotyped Munich there, but
No, well, I mean, no, I mean, it's a part of it. Just like if you go to Edinburgh, you will see men in kilts. You know what I mean? But
Mm.
it's part of it. It's not all of it, but it's part of it, and it's an important part of it as well. So, I mean, Munich is a great city if you really want to sort of get a start in Germany, because the centre of town's very walkable. It's very attractive, the middle of town. There's lots going on. Obviously, people think very much about, the kind of the beer kellers and the beer gardens and things,
Mm.
and that is very lovely. But it's a great city for art as well. It's got these three Pinakothek museums, the Alte Pinakothek, Neue, and the
Okay.
Moderne Pinakothek, which are all like within walking distance of each other, and they're in a very nice leafy part of town. Munich's a very affluent city as well, and it's quite sort of chic. It's not all just kind of umpire
Right. Okay.
bands and things. I
Yeah.
mean, it's got a lot of very high-end stuff there. It's one of the wealthiest cities in in
Right. Okay.
in Germany. So, I mean, you can do a lot of sort of high culture, very good cuisine and stuff like that. The other thing I'd say that's really special about Munich, even more than Berlin, is how easy you can get out into like proper countryside.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the tube network there, I call it the tube network, the S-Bahn and the U-Bahn is what they call it. The U-Bahn are like the underground trains, broadly
Yeah.
speaking. The S-Bahn are the overground ones. Those will get you out to places that are properly in the Alps. I mean, where
Okay.
you're on a lake with snow-capped mountains in the distance, and these are like a tube ride from the city centre. You're talking like half an hour on a
Right. Okay.
on the local train that will get you out to some fantastic places. If you're in the middle of Munich, there's a couple of places in particular. There's a place called the Ammersee, which is, as I say, on the tube network, and the Starnberger See, and these are two big lakes, both of them beautiful, and you literally get the tube to the end of the line and you're on the lake shore. So as I say, I mean, you can be staying in the middle of Munich, and you
Yeah.
can get out some really, really great places.
Well, okay. Geez, I didn't realise that. A bit naive, I suppose. I know it's south,
No,
but
well, I mean, I think the thing is, we get a bit deterred in Britain in that, I live in London. I've always lived here. I think it's a great city, but it's a pretty difficult city to get out of. You know what I mean? It's,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
got
yeah,
a, it's
yeah,
got a
yeah.
big sort of urban belt around it, and you have to travel a long way to get to proper countryside, and it's quite complicated to get there as well. Whereas Munich's more of a compact city. I'd say that
Yeah.
the sort of infrastructure in terms of public transport is kind of a lot better, and so
Yeah.
it's easy to get out to these places, to get out to the lakes around the city and stuff like that.
And do you know, I think that's a really good reminder, because that's exactly what happened to us, to Paul and I. We went to Milan. I went to Milan saying, no, we're going to stay in Milan. We're going to focus on all the wonderful places we can see and do here. And Paul was like, oh, let's go to the lakes. Let's go to Lake Como on a train, and I'm just like, oh, really? We've come to see Milan, but actually being a bit more brave and going, actually, no, let's go out there. It was a wonderful day, but really fantastic. And, I think I would have missed out on experiencing that. My takeaway is be a little bit braver when we potentially planning trips like this to go to a certain city. Just maybe look a little bit further afield, because while you're there, if the transport network's fantastic, like it sounds it is, there's another opportunity there, isn't there, to see another part of the country.
Well, absolutely.
I've got a question for you. I don't know if it's the right one to answer now, but between Munich or Berlin for a long weekend, where would you kind of lean towards? If I had a long weekend, Friday to Sunday, would it be Munich or would it be Berlin?
Well, I think Munich's a kind of smoother ride. I guess that's the way I put it. If you're really kind of want to have a sort of really kind of fascinating time and have lots of different kind of experiences, Berlin is unmissable. But I kind of equate Berlin a bit like going to New York in a way. You'll have an amazing time, but you'll probably be a bit more
Busy.
knackered when you get back than when you went there.
Yeah.
Whereas Munich can, it's a very comfortable experience going to Munich. Everything works very well. Like I say, everything's very kind of user friendly. It's a richer city than Berlin. Berlin is a real jumble of different contrasting things. In some ways, quite an ugly city. In other ways, quite beautiful. But everything's mixed up together. Not unlike London in that regard. Whereas Munich is kind of more like Edinburgh. It's more compact. It's more uniformly beautiful. Yeah. And as I say, you've got this amazing countryside right on your doorstep. So I guess it depends how adventurous you are. I mean, I would start with Munich, and I think Munich's definitely got the edge in the winter. I suppose if I would say do both, but I mean, Munich is a wonderful place to go for Christmas markets. It's got a lovely kind of Advent vibe all the way in the run up to Christmas. And right into the autumn, the lakes are very lovely there. And as I say, you can get to them on a local tube train.
Right. Okay. I mean, we've had Berlin, which kind of almost feels like the story of Germany reinventing itself over time. And then we've just touched on Munich and Bavaria, which kind of feels much more connected. But the next place we're going to touch on is actually the one that I knew least about before kind of preparing for our conversation, which is Dresden. Yeah?
Yeah, well, Dresden's story has been extraordinary. See, my father was born in Dresden during the war, and he survived the bombings.
Oh, wow, okay.
His mother. Yeah, so him and my grandma were there during the destruction of Dresden. And, it's good that, the bombing of Dresden gets a lot of attention because, I mean, it's pretty devastating. But I think one of the downsides to all that attention is people assume the whole thing was kind of flattened and obliterated. I mean, it wasn't really. I mean, a lot of it was left in ruins, but a lot of those ruins existed right throughout the Cold War when it was part of East Germany and very difficult for British people to go to. And then in the last 30 years, it's had this incredible restoration. I mean, I've written about it a number of times, but the last piece I did in the Telegraph, the picture desk did a very good thing of doing these before and after photos of all these different sites in Berlin. In Dresden to support the article. And it's incredible what they've done, revived and not just rebuilding particular historic buildings, because it was this incredible kind of Baroque city, like a huge, big palatial city, a bit like Versailles, but on a bigger scale. But, even whole streets and whole areas have been restored from ruins, and lots of kind of craftsmen from Eastern Europe been replacing all the kind of details and stuff. And it is extraordinary. I mean, it really has kind of risen from the ashes. And, it's not just a museum piece. There's a lot going on there. It's a city of about 500,000 people, which is a nice size, I think, if you're going somewhere for a city break. You can, it's big enough, but you can still walk around the middle of town.
Yeah.
And there's some amazing art there, really incredible. I mean, art critics, art historians would say that the kind of main art galleries there have got some of the greatest collections, not just of German art, but of Italian art,
Oh,
Renaissance art.
okay.
I mean, the whole thing was built by this Emperor August the Starker, Augustus the Strong, and he was like one of these kind of enlightened despots, one of these rulers that wanted to collect all this amazing art and build all these incredible palaces and things. He's an autocrat, really, but I mean, it
Yeah.
was very sort of grand, a bit like Louis XIV in France or one of these
Right.
people.
Yeah.
And it's an incredible legacy. And if you go there, you will have an extraordinary time. I mean, as I say, it's very much on the tourist trail. I mean, I would always say that you should avoid going there in midsummer because you will
Oh,
encounter
okay.
a lot of coach parties and tour groups and things. I mean, this is one of the surprises, I think, that Germany for various sort of cultural and historical reasons isn't a lot of people's first choice in Britain. But actually in Europe, a lot of these places, I mean, Germany's got borders with 9 different countries. So
Yeah.
for a lot of people in the surrounding countries, these places are only a train ride away or a coach ride away, So they're very, very popular. Well, I mean, Dresden is a very popular tourist destination, which is good. I mean, it gets a lot of money from tourism, and also it means there's infrastructure there. There's great restaurants. There's some really good places to stay.
Yeah.
You were talking about wine before in Cochem. Actually, the area around Dresden has got some very good wine, and that didn't
Okay.
do so well during the communist era because it all got collectivized and nationalized and stuff, and
Right. Okay.
quality went right down. But actually, there's a lot of individual wine growers around there now. You can get on a tram in the middle of Dresden, and you can be out in these vineyards in 20 or 30 minutes. And there's some extraordinary places nearby. Meissen, which is about half an hour away by train along the River Elbe. That's where the eponymous Meissen or Dresden, China comes from.
Okay.
And that's a beautiful medieval large town that's, on a hill by the river. You can go there on the boat if you want to. It's a really extraordinary place. And actually people always think, oh, how am I going to get there? There are flights that go there. There are also flights where you can change en route. But I would recommend getting a plane to Berlin, and then from Berlin, you can go direct from Berlin Airport. You don't need to go into town. You can get on a train to Dresden from there, and it's about 2 hours.
Oh,
So,
okay. Oh, right. So very, again, smooth and easy.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you can combine it, obviously, with a trip to Berlin as well. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I would say if you've got a week, I would really, really recommend that because
Yeah.
although Dresden's still a city, it's a compact city. Wherever you are in the middle of town, you're
Yeah.
within sight of kind of hills and fields and things around. So it's not quite as much it's not a metropolis like like Berlin. So I think the two places complement each other very well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also it's very interesting too because you get to see some of the remnants of the communist era too, which is kind of intriguing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's nice that these things are in a minority now rather than a majority, but
Yes. Yeah.
it's still a very intriguing part of the history of the place, and you'll come back feeling like you've really had an adventure, but an enjoyable one, and
Yeah.
and a relaxing one as well.
When I was doing a bit of research, I came across something you wrote back in about you going back to Dresden back in the 80s, I think it was, and visiting the house where your father was born.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
I mean how what went through your mind when you first went back?
Question. Yeah, well, I mean,
If you don't mind asking, do you know what I mean? Because I've gone back to
not at
places
all.
that we lived as a family, and it's you go there and it kind of brings back a few snapshots and stuff. I've gone to places where I wasn't aware of that my grandparents were, and it kind of good to see, but kind of doesn't mean anything to you. It doesn't bring back any memories. But I just wondered about what went through your mind, when you first went back to the house where your dad was born.
Yeah, well, it's very interesting to go back there. I mean, my father wasn't from Dresden. His family weren't from Dresden. They ended up there because right up until the end of the war, it was the safest place in Germany.
Was
I mean,
it?
that's
Okay.
because they got bombed out in Hamburg. And it was a long way. It was a long way south and east for the RAF and the British, the
Yeah.
American bombers based in Britain to get to. So that's kind of why it got bombed
Okay.
comprehensively right at the end of the war. So yeah, they ended up there because it was the safest place. Because
Yeah.
my grandma, her sister was married to someone in the Luftwaffe who was based there. So they were like on the outskirts of town. But the fact that my father was born there was, you know, he was born there essentially as a kind of evacuee, I suppose.
Right.
So they never owned the house that they lived in. It was, it was a rented house. But when I went back there, the most interesting about it was that there was another family living in there now. I mean,
Yeah.
generally speaking, a lot of Germans, everyone in Germany went west at the end of the war. If you were in the parts then that then were sort of Stalin took over and eventually ended up in Poland, then you ended up in Eastern Germany. If you were in Eastern Germany, you ended up in Western Germany because he didn't want to stick around in Eastern Germany. So a lot of people ended up in places that they weren't from, which has been, obviously it was a
Yeah.
traumatic
Yeah.
thing, but actually you could say in some respects created the sort of dynamism of post-war Germany. It's a bit like the thing of refugees arriving in America with a suitcase, and then they kind of,
Yeah.
right, I'm going to make it here sort of thing. You
Yeah.
could say that
Yeah.
everybody, the end of the Second World War was a refugee, and a lot of them became
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. So that
Yeah.
certainly was the case with my father's family. And the family who were living in this house, they'd come from further east.
Right.
I got to know them a little bit. Very
Oh,
interesting
lovely.
because when I first went there, they had very little. They're very basic stuff that, the lifestyles, the kind of stuff you had in your home and stuff during the East German era is very basic. I guess it was a bit
Sure.
like going back in time. It was a bit like,
Was it
yeah,
really?
if
Yeah.
you, yeah, I mean, I suppose if you said, if you went to visit somebody in 1990 who lived in Eastern Germany and you kind of were a guest in their home, it was a bit
Yeah.
like going to somewhere in England in kind of 1960 or something. You know
60s.
what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That
Wow.
kind of
Okay.
level in
Yeah.
terms of the stuff they had. There were some upsides. I would say the sense of family and community was kind of tighter, partly because people had less chance to travel. People were very well read because TV was very censored and the newspapers were very censored. So people preferred to read novels and usually old novels rather than modern novels because the modern novels would be censored. So they'd be reading Dickens and Dostoevsky and Tolstoy and things. So it was very interesting to go and get to know that family a little bit. And then actually to go back there a bit later when they did have all the mod cons, but actually the town was smarter. The house was much smarter. They all had their car and their dishwasher and their flat screen TV and whatever. But the kids had all gone west. They'd gone west to work because, and this is a real issue,
Yeah. Yeah.
in
Of course it would
these
be. Yeah.
places that people. I mean, we're seeing the same thing to a smaller extent in England, aren't they? The way some of these sort of small towns are becoming a bit
Yeah.
hollowed out because everyone's
Yeah.
going to big cities. Well, I
Yeah.
think that a similar thing happened in Eastern Germany, but to the max. But
Right.
I mean,
Okay.
I would say that's the other interesting thing about going to Eastern Germany, and you'll see it if you go to Dresden,
Yeah.
even if you just go out into the countryside a little bit, is there are a lot of towns and villages there that are really untouched and unchanged.
Right.
And,
Okay. Wow.
whereas, sometimes in England you get a lot of this kind of ribbon development and out of
Yeah.
town superstores and all this sort of thing. And you get that a bit in West Germany as well, inevitably. In East Germany, you don't need to go very far before you'll find some real kind of pockets of countryside where you think,
Yes.
wow, I'm really stepping out of a time machine here. And yet your
Really?
phone
Okay.
works.
Oh, wow.
Everyone uses euros. Everyone speaks English if you want to speak English.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So that still be said because Dresden's quite like southeast of that kind of arch, really at the bottom. Would you carry on going east to see that, or would you go further
well, I mean,
south?
you can
Because
go.
you're not near the border, are you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a couple of lovely places on the edge of Dresden. Moritzburg, which is a beautiful big sort of castle in
Okay.
big grounds. Pillnitz, which is like a kind of summer palace that this royal family had there. That's on the River Elbe as well. I mean, the Elbe River is very beautiful. It runs all the way up to Hamburg, and you can do cruises along it as well. And
Okay.
and as I say, Meissen, Moritzburg, Pillnitz, all
Yeah.
these small towns along there. They're very connected with Dresden. I mean, they're you could probably get to all of them within half an hour on public transport. So you don't need to venture very far. But there's some very good countryside around. Also, Leipzig isn't too far from there. I mean, and that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
But Leipzig's a very interesting city, and also I don't want to jump around too much, but Colditz is near there, which is actually obviously fascinating in terms of the Second World War history, if you're a certain age, but actually is also very attractive, unspoilt town in the middle of some very unspoilt countryside that is not really been hit by kind of mass tourism. In fact, it's only the Brits that seem to know about Colditz. Everyone else has never heard of it.
Oh, really? Is that right?
Anyway, I'm probably jumping around a bit too much here, but as I say, So as I say, Berlin and Dresden.
Yeah,
you've got
like that. Really like that kind of.
Go to both of them, and you really will have done quite a trip by the time you get back. So
No, that's really useful for people to look into. And I think we're now we're not jumping around, but we've now kind of done middle, south, east, and we're now kind of going up north, I believe, to touch on Hamburg.
Well, Hamburg,
which looks quite unlike the Germany most of us picture. So I don't know what kind of makes it special. What kind of things do you want to bring to people's attention for Hamburg?
Well, I'm slightly biased here, and that's where my grandmother's family are from. So I've got some sort of family roots there.
Lovely.
The house where my grandma lived when she was growing up and when she was a young woman, that's still there. Don't own it anymore, but it's still there.
Oh.
Hamburg's a great city, and I think it's a really, really underrated city break. I mean, if you don't want to be, there's a lot. It's the sort of place there's a lot of
Oh,
tourism there, but it's nearly all Germans who are going there for the weekend. It's that kind of weekend kind of break in Germany. I mean, it's a big harbour city. It's built on the water.
So I was going to say, is the water quite a key part of Hamburg?
Absolutely. Lots of canals, a big lake in the middle of the city, and the Elbe, the river, has got a lot of harbour stuff on it. I mean, if you think a bit of New York, a bit of Liverpool, a bit of Amsterdam, that's the kind of feel of the place.
Okay.
But it's also a very prosperous city, so it's got some very elegant parts. I mean, you can have a very kind of high end experience there. There's some very smart hotels and things. But as I say, I think it's a really, really user-friendly place. It's a kind of fun place. You've got a bit of Beatles history there, which is quite fun.
Okay,
you've got the whole kind of maritime thing, which is really interesting. There's some really spectacular architecture there. A lot of these old harbour buildings, these big old warehouses and stuff, have been kind of turned into hotels and museums and restaurants and bars and things. So, I mean, it's the complete opposite of the idea of Munich, of Lederhausen and Alps and and Umpar-bands and all that kind of thing. It's got a vibe that I guess in a lot of ways is closer to Holland or Denmark than it is to Bavaria. And it's geographically closer to those places. So if you think Amsterdam and Copenhagen, that is the kind of territory that Hamburg's in, I think. But I would really, really.
Sorry, I'll say again, William. Sorry.
No, you go.
I was just going to say that being this far north, I imagine the food and culture changes as well. Am I right in thinking that? I mean, what should we be kind of eating and drinking in Hamburg? Is it very different because we've gone so far from, around Germany?
You're absolutely right. Yeah. And you took the words out of my mouth because I was going to come to that. Whereas we think, sausages.
Yeah.
And sauerkraut and big steins of beer in Munich.
Yeah.
And drinking out in the beer gardens and in the beer kellers and so forth. Hamburg is all about fish. And funnily enough, all the imbiss, the fast food, you get all these stalls that are not selling sausages. They're actually selling herrings, in buns, and you get all these different sorts of herrings. And people just stop off and they would just get like a Bismarck herring or a matches fillet or any one of these other herrings. They're like sort of €3 or €4 and you get it in a bun. You can have a beer with it if you want or whatever.
Okay.
So the whole kind of fish tradition, the whole kind of seafaring thing is very big there. They have a fantastic event every summer where you get all these tall ships coming into the Elbe, from all over Europe, all the big old sailing ships.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And at any time of year, actually, if you go down onto the waterfront, there's lots and lots going on. There's loads of stalls and things. There's the old the fish market, which opens at the crack of dawn. You can go down there at like 5 o'clock in the morning if you want, but any time the kind of
I bet that's better, some sights and sounds and smells there as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Brilliant.
some people, if you've been up all night in Hamburg, and for instance, back in the day, it's where the Beatles used to end up if they've been doing an all-nighter. And even now, if people are going out clubbing all night and stuff, they will end up in a fish market in the morning having some breakfast, and then other people will turn up there early. And you can do some great harbour tours as well. I mean, you could just jump on a boat there and they will take you around all the harbour with all these massive container vessels and cranes and things.
Oh,
so,
okay.
it's a different sort of trip. But actually, you can go to art galleries there. You can go to smart restaurants and things as well. Like I say, if you think Copenhagen or Amsterdam, that's the kind of territory that Hamburg's in. And
would you combine Hamburg with the coast? Would you do that?
I mean, Hamburg, I would say the nearest coast is the North Sea coast. But I would say the best coast in Germany, and again, it's a part of Germany that's popular with Germans, and Dutch and Swedes, Scandinavians in general, but it's not very well known in Britain, is the Baltic coast of Hamburg, which broadly speaking, if you think of a map of Germany, it's the top right bit. It's the northeast bit of Germany.
Right, okay, yeah.
And actually from Hamburg, you can jump on a train that goes to Rügen, which is the biggest island in Germany. You get there across a causeway, so the train kind of goes across a causeway and ends up there. And that is a fantastic spot. I mean, it's about 3 hours away on the train. You can get a direct train there from Hamburg, maybe cost you 50 quid. And the train goes along a lot of the coast and ends up on this island with lovely kind of silver sandy beaches, lots of woods.
Oh, wow.
As I say, the tourist infrastructure there is very developed. You won't be kind of stepping out of a train and thinking, where am I? What do I do? Sort of thing. I mean, there's hotels, there's restaurants, it's full of tourists. The only difference is that you will hardly ever meet another English tourist, which, just makes a nice
That's not necessarily a bad thing, is it? Either sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, but the main thing I'd stress about all these things is they're very user-friendly, Everybody wants to practice their English on you. I mean, I speak quite good German, but, I'm always finding it's an uphill struggle getting people to not speak English with me. So, I mean, if you go there and you think, I can't speak the language, certainly won't have any problems. People will be delighted to meet an English person. And, the infrastructure is very good in terms of, restaurants and hotels and things. But also it's very kind of, it's very online kind of society. There's an app for everything. If you go there with your iPhone, you soon find when you turn up in these different places, you can get the app from the tourist board, you can get the app for the local trains and buses and things. And, if you're somebody who's kind of, likes playing around on your phone, you'll be able to use it to,
navigate,
plan all your routes and everything,
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the same time, there's a kind of old-fashioned element, sit down restaurants with tablecloths and proper cutlery and, slightly old school sort of charm, especially on that Baltic coast, because that was in Eastern Germany as well. So, the clock stopped to a certain extent. It was a place where kind of time sort of stood still a little bit. And, it's intriguing to go back and look at that. So I would say, actually, if you've got a week,
yes, well,
Dresden is fantastic. Or if you've got a week to do something different, and again, in the summer, probably a stretch to do it in the winter, I would say Hamburg and Rügen, which is this island on the Baltic coast.
Okay, so
one thing I would say about Hamburg, if readers want to Google it, last summer I did a series of articles about Hamburg for the Telegraph. I did 4 articles, and the lead one was how to spend the perfect weekend in Hamburg. And if you go on that will give you a sort of 48-hour itinerary, not hour by hour, but kind of like morning, afternoon, evening for a Saturday and a Sunday in Hamburg. And, you'll make your own discoveries, but you won't go too far wrong with that. It provides a very good starting point.
That's really
interesting. As I say, if people don't mind Googling my name, William Cook, Telegraph, Hamburg, that would be the first thing that
I'll
comes
put up on I'm getting better at this. I'm putting marks in when you mention certain places, and then I'm getting pictures off of the internet and putting it on there. So I'll most definitely get a couple of
Brilliant.
pictures for some of the places that you've said, and also I'll try and get a QR. I'm a subscriber to the Telegraph, so I think I can share kind of articles and stuff. So I'll see how I can get that onto the screen. But again, people can Google and find other previous kind of articles that you've written.
Well, absolutely.
It's
Well,
really,
also with
it's really helpful, really interesting as well. There's so much. I mean, sadly, we haven't got enough time to go into all the detail you do in your articles, but there is a whole library of content, isn't there? From what you guys
absolutely.
are doing.
And what I'd say with these Hamburg articles that's good, I did 4 of them. One was how to spend a perfect weekend in Hamburg. And then there was an article on attractions like museums and galleries and things.
Yeah.
And then another one on restaurants, and then another one just on bars and cafes. So, I mean, if you look at those 4, you'll pretty much have the whole thing sorted out. There's a few hotels in there as well at different price levels. And as you were saying, the other thing I'd say about these articles that's really great is that obviously there's some information I've put in there, but also there's a lot of hyperlinks. So you can then click straight through to the websites of whether it's a museum or a hotel or a restaurant or some attraction. Say you want to go on a harbour tour, or you want to go on a boat tour around the lake or up the canal or something. You can click through all these sites. Even if you get to the German site, it'll have a little DE at the top. And then if you look on that, it'll change to an EN for English, like a little Union Jack. So all these websites, even if you land on the German version of the site, there'll be a little button you can click to go on the English one. So as I was saying, if you use these articles as the first step, and then go to hyperlinks to the actual websites of the places you want to go to. I mean,
that's really good. Yeah, that's really helpful, because that's sometimes a struggle. We can all get lost down the rabbit hole of trying to find certain places and having recommendations or things that people have kind of shortlisted for people to look at. It's always, they're the ones that I choose anyway, because we could be sat there we've sat there for days just trying to choose a summer holiday, but we've gone back to something that someone recommended a couple of months previous, which would have saved us a lot of heartache and pain. So I love that idea. That's really, really helpful. Really helpful.
The other thing I was going to mention as a general thing for traveling to Germany, as you probably know, and this applies to all countries now, if you start putting stuff into the internet, you start getting tourist sort of services up there, which are not necessarily terrible, but they're not the official ones. And you never know whether they've got a sort of vested interest. Are they trying to promote a particular hotel?
Good points. Yeah, good point.
Experience. The best site for anywhere in Germany to go to is Germany.travel. Germany.travel. That is so easy to remember. And that is the official German tourist board. Once you go onto that site, it will then take you to all the different areas for all the particular places. And actually, if you go, for instance, on these Hamburg articles or the articles I've written about, Dresden or wherever in the past, that will have the official tourist board as well. But if you're a bit confused, because it's happened to me a couple of times in the past, I have any disasters, but you just end up having a kind of substandard experience if you go to these other places and you don't quite know what they're selling as well. So, as I say, go to Germany.travel, www.germany.travel, and that will take you to the official website, and then that will take you to an all manner of different places,
Yeah. That's really, really good, William. That's really, really helpful. And I'm going to look at that. I mean, although, to be honest with you, what struck me from our conversation is that, talking about Germany is just not one destination, is it really? It's almost meaningless me thinking as Germany is one. We've just touched on 4, very different, Berlin, Munich, Dresden, Hamburg, they all sound completely different from one another. I mean, I was I shouldn't be surprised, but just going from sausages to herring,
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, well, I mean, I think, we have this variety to a certain extent in Britain, don't we? I mean, we tend to forget, but I suppose if you're a first time and you went from London to Edinburgh, you get quite a surprise, in terms of how different the places were. But I think there's a kind of historic reason for that, in that, Germany's only been one country since 1871. And even since then, it's obviously changed a lot in various times, during various crises. But, Dresden was originally the capital of Saxony. Munich was originally the capital of Bavaria, and Berlin was originally the capital of Prussia. So those are 3 completely different places. Okay. And actually, Hamburg now, Germany has these 16 Länder, these 16 states, which is kind of quite equivalent to the states in the USA, I suppose, in terms of how different and autonomous they are. But Hamburg is actually one of the Hamburg and Berlin are both city-states. They're both actually states on their own. So it gives you a sense of how distinct a
I
place
never
Hamburg
knew that.
is from
Yeah, yeah.
other places around it. It actually, I don't want to get too legalistic about it, but it's got its own kind of state parliament and things. So it's got a very different identity. And it's interesting if you travel around Germany, you say to people, oh, where are you from, sort of thing. They'll say, I'm a Hamburger, or I'm Saxon, or I'm Bavarian, or whatever. They have quite a different take on it. A bit like someone saying, I'm a Yorkshireman, it exists in certain parts of England and Britain, but it's very much specific there. And as I say, you will have very different experiences in all those places. But if you want to, if you want to dip a toe in Germany, I would say any one of those four places.
I was going to put you on the spot, actually, William. I was going to literally say before we finish, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you had 3 days tomorrow and could go anywhere in Germany, where would you go? But I think that's really unfair. I think for me personally, you give me your sense on that, because I know exactly where I think I'm going to be paying my attention to. So you tell me what you think.
Well, if I could go tomorrow, I would go to Munich, because I think Munich in summer is really great. I'm actually going to Berlin on Monday for a few days to do a piece.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, partly to do with this Berlin book I've written.
Yeah,
that's the Telegraph. So that will be coming out in a month or so. So I would say, don't go to Berlin in the winter. If you want to do a winter trip, and you can only get away in the winter, I still think Munich's even nicer in the summer, but I would go to Munich in the winter.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah,
I'm glad you said that, because I was thinking of Berlin. I was thinking of Berlin, but actually mixing it up with heading south.
Yeah, absolutely. So
doing a couple of days.
Yeah, I would say, and Dresden, I'd avoid it in the winter. Very special in the spring and the summer. So as I say, all these places, the main thing I'd say is winters can be pretty harsh in Germany, and it doesn't always snow. If it snows, that's fine. And it's all very nice. But as I say, if you can only go to Germany in the winter this year, say it's got to be a winter trip or nothing, I would go to Munich and get down to Salzburg as well while you're there. That's in Austria.
Great. That's where we're going.
Yeah, but
that's where I'm going to go. That's where I'm going to go. Yeah,
really?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Stevie and Diane, we've always talked about going away end of the year to Germany. So, and Paul and I got a little bit of time off in a couple of weeks' time. We've been considering on where to go. So I'm kind of thinking actually maybe Berlin, a couple of days, and then getting down, and then maybe we can visit Zurich with Munich. Yeah. Sorry, not Zurich, Munich with Stevie and Diane, because we've done Cologne, so we most definitely want to start ticking them off. And yeah, really, it's got a really nice feel to it. Really, really nice feel to it. So thank you so much, William, for sharing that.
Well, it's my pleasure. And as I say, when you're in Munich, get down to Starnberg on the Starnberger See, which is the big lake there. Yeah. And also get down to the Ammersee as well, which is the other smaller lake. You'll see them both on the tube map. They really are a hop and a skip from the centre of town. And I can't wait to hear about your experience.
Yeah, well. Almost definitely. Yeah. Too right. I'll share some photos as well. Look, William. Time wise and stuff. Just thank you very much. I wanted to kind of finish on the 15th Man, which is published at the beginning of October. Again, the book over your left or right shoulder, depending on how people look at the screen. I don't think that book could have been written anywhere else. Do you know what I mean? Given that we spent, today talking about Germany, and the book starts in Berlin at one of the most very moments in modern German history, I think it's probably the perfect place to have kind of parked your book in, isn't it? I think with all your knowledge and experience, obviously. Yeah. I don't know if you want to share anything else.
Well, it's a very special time. I wanted to write about 1990 because that's when I first started going to Germany. And also it struck me recently that, that world doesn't exist anymore. I'm old enough to still think of 1990 as recent history, but it just isn't. It's a completely different time now. And actually, the last time I was, I tend to go back to Germany every 10 years. I like to write a piece about, 10 years after reunification, 20 years after, 30 years after. And the last time I did this piece, the younger people I was talking to, I was really struck by the fact that they weren't really kind of that interested in the Cold War anymore. Their experiences were different. They were more about like climate change or Russian or whatever it was, or Ukraine or whatever. Things have really moved on. And I thought, well, very important to capture that time because it was a very special time. Everything was up for grabs. People it was like Dickens said about, in Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times and the worst of times, So I
Yeah,
was I
yeah,
was
how
I
right.
was I was glad to try and capture that, and it's had some very good reaction from other thriller writers. Thriller writers have written quite a lot about Berlin, Germany, and the Cold War, and so forth. And the thing that pleased me most was a number of people have said very atmospheric, because that's what I was really trying to do is capture that
Yeah, is
atmosphere.
that quite hard to do? Is that quite hard to do?
Well, I
Probably
think.
not, but I don't know. But
Well, I don't know. My feeling is, and it's my first novel, so I don't want to gas on about writing fiction like I know loads about it. But my feeling is with any kind of writing is less is more because the thing that makes reading so special is you're creating your own pictures. It's a bit like
yeah,
listening to a radio play or something. And I think sometimes people try and overload pieces with description. If you give people the bare bones, they will fill in the gaps. Whether it's a place they've been to before, and obviously a lot of memories come flooding through, or where it's a place they haven't been to before, and then their imagination takes over. So
you're so right. Yeah,
yeah,
you're so right. I've had to read sometimes a book that's too, I hadn't thought of it like that, William, but too descriptive, and I'm having to read it a couple of times to try and build that picture in my mind's eye when actually I should just be getting on with the story. But because there's so many words in there describing moment, it's like, okay, I'm getting too bogged down in that sometimes. So it must be a very hard balance to get where you give the reader enough, but not too much.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and writing is rewriting, basically. I mean, it's like anything. You work on something, you refine it, but in the end, the book's about the people I met and the places I went to. So it's reporting in a way. It's not a million miles away from the travel writing I do the rest of the time.
And the book's available on Amazon. Pre-order on Amazon.
Yeah. You can get it on Amazon, or it'll be in bookshops as well. But I mean, Amazon's a great place to start. Waterson's has its own site as well, and so on and so forth. And you'll see some reviews there and reactions from other authors and from readers as well. So it's all good.
Yeah, but I can't see. I pre-ordered it on Amazon, but you can't get it yet until the 1st of October, can you?
No, it'll then come through then. But some people have read these kind of advanced copies and stuff, and
to then give their
written about it that way. But what's so great actually with Berlin and Germany is it has produced so much great literature, and so much great travel writing as well, because there is so much different stuff there. I mean, what you'll get is a great variety of experiences, and actually I can't wait for your clients and your viewers to kind of feedback about that. Whenever I do a piece in the Telegraph, what I love to do is read the comments down at the bottom. And I'm always amazed how many people have traveled extensively in Germany, lived there a lot of the time, and they've always got a really rich variety of experiences. Reminds me a little bit actually of when people go to America. You can't generalize about America. People have, they have a whole range of different experiences and opinions about the place. And that's the thing with Germany. It's a very dynamic country, and you'll come back with a lot of memories.
Well, and since we've been starting to do this, we've had a number of clients that have come and told me. I was only mentioning you the other day when we were chatting about that clients were listening to our episode around the Spain and road trip, and following that, they've actually booked a holiday in Santander. Never ever thought about going there, but Santander, and they're going to go across east Bilbao and even further than that, so they're going to pick off some of the places that we mentioned through there. So it's having the great effect. It's giving the people the whetting their appetite to give them some undiscovered places or places they've heard of but never thought, actually, no, let's pay the money to go there. They're not taking the ferry. I mentioned the ferry that you spoke to me about from Portsmouth, but no, even still, it's having the right impact, William, by us having these conversations. It's good.
Well, that's great. And I'm somebody who travels a lot, but I'm not a travel expert. I'm somebody that's going and making the journeys, just like a viewer or client or reader or whatever. And everybody makes their own discoveries, and I'm always looking to learn from other people. So any feedback you get is always great.
Oh, I will do. Yeah, William, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of The Travel Brief. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and has given you a few new ideas, places to discover, or simply something to think about your next trip. If you enjoyed the episode, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who loves travelling too. It really helps me reach more people and continue bringing you interesting conversations, useful ideas and a little inspiration for your future travels. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next Travel Brief.